exactly.
It's nice to meet you. I've been following you on social media for a while, so I'm really excited to chat to you about your actually very interesting resume and also and also Hodley. I was reading this morning actually your pinned tweet with the resume that you'd written out a couple of years ago. Oh my God, it's so funny.
Yeah, I need to thank you. I need to update it actually because some things have changed a little bit, but yeah, I loved creating that. It was a lot of fun.
I thought it was so clever the way you did that. It looks like the white paper. I was just like, that's so genius. I'll put it in the show notes actually, because I think people want to go and have a look at it. It's too funny.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
yeah, welcome. Well, do you want to just give a brief intro of who you are and then we can kick off? I've got a million and one questions to ask you.
Yeah, sure. My name is Liz. I go by Babes Who Bitcoin on Twitter, and um, I help run Bitcoin Charlotte meetup group, and I throw an event called Hodlween, and kind of an event consultant, been helping with other events in the Bitcoin space, and helped out with Texas Slim and the Beef Initiative for a little bit. So kind of just been doing a few different things in the Bitcoin space. And last year I was kind of a nomad for a little bit. So I was really kind of traveling around, going to Bitcoin events in my van. So
Did you? Oh,
yeah.
wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really great. It was a great experience. I went around the United States and went to a few different Bitcoin events. So it was
Wait, did you
nice to
do that on
meet.
your own or did you have company?
Yeah, I did it on my own.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was great. I didn't go. I just went to a few. I would love to do it again, actually, kind of on a bigger scale, sort of like what Captain Sid did when he went on his motorcycle tour. But I went to the Lake Satoshi camp out in Michigan, which that's an amazing event.
Oh,
Some
so
really
you know my
great.
friend Alison then from Optimal Wellness?
Hey, Allison.
Yeah, blonde girl.
Yeah, yes, yeah, yep. And that's just a great event. I mean, I met amazing people there, and what they're doing in Michigan is just really great. And then after that, I drove to Colorado and went to an event out there, the first Bitcoin Bush Bash in America. I had gone to a Bush Bash in Australia, and then so I wanted to go to the first one in America. So I did that, and then after that, I decided to go to Burning Man. So I ended up at Burning Man, which DJ Val helped me get ready for Burning Man. So it was definitely an experience. I would, like I said, I would love to do it again and kind of just go to different Bitcoin meetups across the United States just to meet other Bitcoiners. Because it's nice to see, just to kind of get out of sometimes the bigger conferences and see what people are doing, in smaller communities, especially since I've been helping out with Bitcoin Charlotte for a little bit now. So
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the smaller events are more impactful. I mean, I went to Bitcoin Nashville, but I did the unconference for a couple of days beforehand, and it, or actually, sorry, that was just a 1 day event, but it was amazing. It was so nice because we all got to chat with each other, and it was just, you just had a lot more opportunity to connect with people. I think when you go to these large conferences, they're great if you're a newbie, but if you
yeah.
just kind of want to hang out with people and get a bit deeper into the weeds, they're not optimal because there's not really like the kind of space to do that. I am going to do Bitcoin Vegas though, because I love Las Vegas. And I was just like, there's no way that I can miss out on doing that. So I've already booked my hotel and then I'm just going
Oh,
to get the
amazing.
yeah, I'll get the flight nearer the time, but they also gave me an affiliate code, so I've been sending that out to my community and like promoting it because I thought it'd be really fun. But yeah, and it's funny actually because I've booked to stay in the Pink Flamingo. I've always wanted not the Pink Flamingo, the Flamingo, but I've always wanted to stay there because it's such a weird like oldie worldy kind of kitsch hotel. And then I saw that Lisa Vanderpump of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, she's opening up a restaurant there called Pinky, and
Oh, there you go.
I was like, I so want to do a girls like meet up there, like an access tribe. I don't know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
brunch or something.
that would be great. We'll just have to make the pink flamingo instead. We'll have to make it like a purple ostrich for Noster.
Well, she does have a lot of purple decor in her restaurant, so it actually might fit. I don't know what this one's
Okay.
going to be like. I'm guessing it's going to be pink because it's called Pinky, but who knows? So tell me,
Yeah,
because you
just
have a background. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say you just have to be careful in Vegas. Don't lose all your sats.
Oh, yeah. I don't really have like a gambling thing. I don't know. I've
Yeah,
tried a
me
few
either.
times. Doesn't really
Me
interest
either.
me. It just feels like a really poor trade. I'm like, oh, so I
Yeah,
basically give you money and you give me nothing back, and now I'm
yeah,
poor. Like, okay.
exactly.
Thanks.
It's like a scam.
100%. Yeah. But it does mean that you get nice cheap hotels in Vegas. So thank you, gamblers.
Yeah.
So every cloud has a silver lining. Yeah. So tell me about your background then, because you've got a well, maybe not an unusual background for somebody in Bitcoin, but I think given that you're so deep in the traveling nomad and event space now, you're doing something very different to what you started your career doing. So can you talk a little bit about your early career journey and then how you discovered Bitcoin?
Yeah. So my background is actually in civil engineering. So I went to college to be a civil engineer, traffic engineering in particular. And I went down that route because I really liked math. I was really good at it, and kind of just fell into civil engineering. I wouldn't say like even at the time when I was in school that I loved it, but I loved math and I loved solving problems. So kind of just went that path and graduated from North Carolina. Like I was in North Carolina, and then I moved up to Baltimore, DC area, and I was in the DC area for about 7, 8 years, and was working on traffic signals. So I was in charge of the 1,000 traffic signals going in and out of DC. And I wouldn't say that I ever like really loved it. It definitely wasn't my passion. And I was working for local government, and I didn't fully understand it at the time. But when I started to kind of dislike my job, I think I was becoming more of a libertarian. And there were just some things at the time at that job, like I would suggest new ideas, and then they kind of just got shut down and said, hey, this is how it's been done for 35 years. We got to keep doing it this way. And that just didn't resonate with me. And so it took me a little while. I mean, I think it took me about 2 years. I worked with a career counselor. I shifted into another traffic role doing marketing because I thought marketing would be better. But I was talking about radar detectors on roadways. And I was like, this just doesn't fit who I am. And I decided I quit 2 jobs, and that was in 2020. And after I quit those jobs, it was right during the pandemic as well. So well, let me back up a little bit. So I had heard about that, kind of led me into Bitcoin, but before that, really my family had gotten me into Bitcoin. I have brothers, and like they had been in Bitcoin for a while, like kind of
Oh,
early
wow.
days.
Huh.
And so I had heard about it for a long time, but did I understand it? No. So I had heard about it, like, up until 2019, 2020. I'd been hearing it from them, but I was living my fiat life and, working a job, and was busy doing that. And so Bitcoin for me at the time was kind of just an investment, and I didn't really understand it. So fast forward to 2019, I quit that job. At the same time, which I've had a hard time talking about this, so I was nervous to talk about it in public, but I recently started talking about it when I was traveling. At that same time I quit my job, I was also engaged, and my fiance at the time actually stole Bitcoin from me. And it's a whole nother like long story to that. But the importance of that to this story is that this
Wow.
all happened at the same time. So like I quit my job.
Did you get
Bitcoin
it
was
back?
no. But
Shit.
so it was stolen from me. I quit my job, and what I realized was, hey, like if I'm going to, be my own bank, I need to learn a lot more about how I'm securing my stack. And so at the time, I didn't realize this. It was a terrible thing that happened to me, but it's ended up to be such a great thing, and it's really changed my life. So that happened in 2019, and then in 2020, I moved back to Charlotte, and I've just personally always had a passion for throwing events. I would throw them at my house all the time. I'm really into music. I would have people over at my house. I would have like a 70s party every year. And so my brother in Charlotte, he had been running Bitcoin Charlotte since 2013. So he approached me and he said, Liz, like, I know you love doing this, throwing events on your own. Do you want to help me really grow Bitcoin Charlotte? Because he had kind of taken some breaks with some things in his life too. And so in 2020, we decided to start growing it again. And so we did that in 2020. And I remember, I think it was like November of 2020. Maybe that's when we did our first meetup. And there was only, well, it was, during COVID too, like maybe 4 people sitting around a table. And, since then we've really grown it. I mean, he's been growing it since 2013, but now we have like over 2,000 members. But yeah, that's really kind of how I started really learning about Bitcoin, and it coincided with the pandemic. So when I had quit those jobs and I moved back to Charlotte, and then people started getting stimulus checks. So that's when like light bulbs started going off for me. It's like, well, why is everybody getting free money from the government? And why are we paying taxes? So then I started asking questions, and I started going back and listening to podcasts from a long time ago. And then I started helping with Bitcoin Charlotte, which is really what started when I started learning. And I remember I went to Bitcoin Miami in 2021. I believe that was the one in Miami, and went with my family. And that's when things really started clicking for me. And I think it was Michael Saylor that was talking, that it's like, hey, it's fun if we make money along the way, but that's not what it's about, you know? And I was so naive to things, just how I grew up. Like, I didn't understand that people were unbanked. I didn't know that a lot of women were unbanked. I didn't understand like sending money overseas, how that costs money. And it just, you know, it's a movement that I wanted to be a part of, just to be, it's not about, I mean, it's great if we make money along the way, and that's what you're saying, but this is a humanitarian movement and for freedom around the world. And I try and dumb it down for people sometimes, but it's really not that complicated. Like, your money should be your money. So anyway, that's kind of how I got into it. And so I've been throwing events for Bitcoin Charlotte since 2020. My brother and I have actively been doing that. And then that's kind of how Hodlween came about as well. So when I came on board, like, a lot of the meetups were just not just, but they were at bars. And what I started to realize, I was like, well, we can talk about Bitcoin literally anywhere, you know, it doesn't have to be in a bar. So then I started just having meetups really in lots of different places. Like, there's a minor league baseball team here in Charlotte. So we had a meetup at one of the games, and that was one of our most well-attended meetups that we would do in the summer. And what I started to realize is we would get all these different people. It wouldn't be the same people that would come out on Saturdays for the bar meetups. We would get a whole different group of people, because some people are interested in sports. I did a volunteer event at around Christmas time, where we make shoe boxes for kids and send them overseas, and a whole different group of people came out for that. And then we did one event that was called Bitcoin Rocks. This is like one of my favorite events. And we had a local artist paint our Bitcoin Charlotte logo on a rock, and we put a QR code on the back. And we hid 21 of them around the city to educate about the importance of scarcity. And
I love
people loved it. So we did that one, and then the QR code went to our website, and if they came to a meetup, we would give them sats. So what we were trying to do is kind of just think outside of the box a little bit, and how can we get more people interested, instead of just kind of doing the standard, hey, we're meeting at a bar, because, you know, not everybody likes to be at a bar either. So then after those events, Halloween really kind of came up as a joke. There's a Bitcoiner here. He goes by Bitcoin Vegan on Twitter, and his birthday's around Halloween.
Oh yeah,
and
Justin
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So he's from Charlotte, and
Oh right, I didn't know that. Huh.
yeah, and so we were with him one day, and he was saying it was his birthday, and I was like, oh, well, we got to do something for your birthday. And then we just came up with Halloween on the spot. And so it kind of started as for something for his birthday. And then I came up with the idea, like, oh, everyone needs to dress as Satoshi Nakamoto. And
That's a tough ask.
Yeah. So that's how Halloween got started. And it's definitely grown over the years, for sure. But again, I believe that there's a way to introduce Bitcoin to people, and it can maybe not be in the traditional way, or going to a conference, because not everybody's going to go to a conference, or not everybody wants to talk about macroeconomics, you know? So Halloween is just another way to introduce people to Bitcoin in a fun way.
So how do you structure the event then? Is it just like a party, or is there some educational aspect to it as well?
So it's varied over the years. So that first year, this is our fourth year this year. And so that first year we did it, it's a 2-night event. And the first night we do a pumpkin carving, which is one of my favorite parts of the whole event. We do a pumpkin carving, and it's a pumpkin carving contest. A lot of the pumpkins are Bitcoin themed. They don't have to be, but a lot of them are. And so they're just really, it's amazing what people come up with, and they're really creative. And at that pumpkin carving, we had 3 people just local to Charlotte speak that night. Justin was one of them, and then my brother, and then another person from our group. And so that was like our education part of it. And then the second night is the party. And then the second year we did it, we kind of went more education, and we did a mini conference. And we had some speakers come out, like Guy Swan and his brother Jeff Swan, and BTC Sessions came out. And we hosted a mini conference that first day, and then
Didn't
the
even
party
know
this.
Guy Swan had a brother.
Yeah, we actually have on our the talks were recorded, and so it's a really cool talk that they did because it was the two of
Oh.
them on stage. But they're also from North Carolina, so they've been huge supporters of Bitcoin Charlotte, which is really
Oh,
nice.
are they? I didn't realize that. God, I didn't realize there was such a scene in North Carolina. That's insane. I remember when we
Yeah,
first connected a few months ago, I'd sort of like looked into and you were sort of saying that there's a lot going on there. And I was kind of like, oh, really? But I didn't realize like there were that many of the kind of people that I know of that are from there. Wow.
yeah. Max and Stacy are they lived in
Are
North
they?
Carolina for a while too. Yeah, they're not here now, but
But are they from there?
hopefully I'm not doxing them. um, yeah, I think they were in Raleigh for a bit, so it was a long time ago. I'm not sure if they're from here, but they've been very generous with us too. So yeah, there's some prominent Bitcoiners in North Carolina, and there's a decent scene because we have Bitcoin Charlotte, and then there's a Raleigh group, but we feud with them about which Bitcoin group is better, and then then there's Asheville, and then we have Wilmington as well. So
Oh, wow.
it's a decent scene.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
That's really amazing. So you do the pumpkin carving and then the following night, sorry, I interrupted you, but what was the next day?
Yeah, and so then we do the party, and so the party is really just a fun way to get people into Bitcoin, and it's the longest running Bitcoin themed Halloween party that there is that I know of. I think there might be two other ones happening this year that are kind of like spawning off, doing two others. There might be one in Argentina, and there might be one in London this year. But
Oh, that's cool.
so yeah, so the party, and also it coincides because on the white paper was written on October 31st, so it's also Bitcoin's
It's perfect.
birthday. Yeah. So we have a Satoshi Nakamoto costume contest, and then we have a tarot card reader. There's a magician coming. There's hidden Bitcoin, and there's musicians. And what I've tried to do at this party is really get it to be as Bitcoin only as we can. It's not always easy to do that, but almost all the people involved are typically Bitcoiners. Like our tarot card reader, I was just looking for one on Twitter last year, and someone reached out to me, and so she's coming, and she's a Bitcoiner. The magician, he didn't really know anything about Bitcoin. It was the same magician that I got last year, but we are paying him in Bitcoin. So what I think is really cool is to try as much as we can to say, hey, we're a Bitcoin only event. We want to be Bitcoin only. So most
Hmm.
of the vendors are typically Bitcoiners. We typically get Bitcoin musicians to come as well. This year, even the bartenders that we're having is going to be Bitcoiners. So I found one on Noster, and then another one that runs another meetup in the States. So you know, it's interesting to see people in other forms of their life too, because you might go to a conference and meet these people, and that's what you're only talking about Bitcoin, but obviously people have other interests, so it's kind of interesting to see them come to the party and showcase some of their other talents. And I'm a firm believer that people are going to get into Bitcoin lots of different ways. So I think the culture is a big part of it. But yeah, so I think I said there's hidden Bitcoin, and really it's a celebration. So we say that it's a celebration for the hodlers and a way to celebrate Bitcoin. And what's been cool is that I've seen a lot of people come in that were almost like too afraid to go to a Bitcoin event. A lot of times we get a lot of the girlfriends or the wives of Bitcoiners, and they're like, oh, well, I'll come to Hodlween because that's an easy entry point and sounds fun. And so that was kind of my hope all along, that you could get people interested, and maybe it wouldn't be so scary to them. And maybe while we're there, like they get orange pilled, or we can tell them a little bit about Bitcoin, or they find the hidden sats and then they download a wallet on their phone. And so it's really just a fun way to introduce people to Bitcoin.
That's super cool. Wow. So how many years has Hodlween been running now?
This is year 4.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. I'm assuming that in North Carolina, they didn't have as many restrictions on in-person stuff during COVID. Would that be right?
No, they definitely didn't. I no, especially
Yeah.
around that time when we did the first one, it wasn't near as bad.
You
So
could do it in person, right? Yeah, because I
yeah.
was living in New York at the time, but I had a
Oh.
friend that was down in South Carolina. She was like, "Oh, we can go to the nail parlor and do this and do that," and I was like, "Really?" Like,
Yeah, when I went to Australia and I heard how bad it was there, it was hard for me to comprehend, because in North Carolina it just wasn't that bad,
yeah. Do
which
you know
I'm
it's
great which
funny?
I'm grateful for.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it's funny when I lived in the US, it used to annoy the shit out of me that there were all these separate states because I was like, everything is so complicated. And if like I moved from Brooklyn to New Jersey and it was like I needed a new driver's license, I needed, everything just becomes different. The tax is
Yeah.
different. The liquor store opening hours are different. Like the Jersey ones sell food as well as liquor. The ones in, Manhattan or Brooklyn don't. I mean, it's like just ridiculous stuff where you're like, really, does it have to be this complicated? But I will say that during COVID, it was interesting because when you see something like that coming down sort of from an authoritarian, kind of federal government, if you like, it was interesting to see then that you have this opportunity as states to respond differently and you can see like the difference in outcomes. I mean, Florida did really well actually, and they were the
Hmm.
most free of all of the states. So it's been quite interesting watching that play out. Australia, I don't know what the hell is happening in Australia. I mean, I really like think it I mean, I think it's like the intel agencies, the Five Eyes that are pressuring them, and they're like, we want the US to defend us. So, like, when the US says jump, we'll say how high. But they've just brought out a law that is, I think it was yesterday, like a misinformation law, basically saying the government gets to decide what's misinformation. So, if you're pushing
Oh
anything
my
that goes
goodness.
against, I mean, like at that point, I'm just like, you guys might as well just pack up and call yourselves a dictatorship. They also
Yeah.
brought in a law recently, a few weeks ago, where oh, actually, I don't even think it was a few weeks ago. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, but where anybody can legally change their gender, and identify as a woman. So now any man can basically decide on a whim that he's a woman, self-identify, and ask to be put in a women's prison, ask to, come to women's rape shelters, like I mean, it's just I don't know what's happened to Australia. And through COVID, I mean, they had actual concentration camps.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, some of the stories I heard, I couldn't, I was really naive to it and I couldn't believe it when I was there, what they were telling me, and people getting assaulted when they would just leave their apartments in Melbourne. I mean, it's terrible.
yeah. Yeah, it's really nuts. I don't know what's happened to that country, but it's gone well off the rails. Yeah. So
I'm surprised. It's yeah, it's hard when I like some of the Bitcoiners that I met there. It's amazing to me that they're still there. And I mean, I think it's because I mean Australia is it's a beautiful place, but yeah, your freedom is their freedom just being taken from them. So a lot of the people that I met there, they are talking about getting out and leaving. So, but then
yeah.
the question is, where do you go?
Well, I mean, ironically, a lot of Bitcoiners are moving to Dubai, which I just find so hilarious that they're moving to like an Arab dictatorship. I mean, you know, this isn't a comment on how life is in Dubai, because I know lots of people that live there and, they're very happy living there and all the rest of it. But there's some irony when you leave like a Western country that's supposedly like a
Right.
liberal democracy to move to a Muslim dictatorship. And I'm like, okay, that tells you how bad things are in Australia.
Exactly. I don't know a ton about Dubai. I didn't know a lot of Bitcoiners were going there.
Oh yeah. Well, they've got very friendly crypto laws, so they're very kind of friendly
Okay.
towards that whole ecosystem, and they're also very business friendly. But it's interesting because I mean, Dubai was basically like a desert full of goat herders, and I'm not even like being like facetious here. That's literally what it was in the 1960s. And then I think they discovered oil there. And it basically went from being this sort of desert nomadic population to just having skyscrapers everywhere, like unbelievable infrastructure. But they've been quite clever in some ways how they've dealt with immigration, because you can move there as long as you have a job. But even if, like, if I move there, if I have kids there, those children will never be United Arab Emirate citizens, like Emiratis. They can never get citizenship. So
Okay.
what they do is they allow immigration to come in and people to come in if they have a job and they're contributing to the economy, but they don't allow people to just come in and migrate there without having some purpose to be there. So basically what that means is it's kind of preserved the country for the indigenous people, in the sense that they're not being kind of overwhelmed in that way. But if you want to move there, as long as you have a job and you can pay your way, they're very happy to have you. And then they have lots of things like, it's very easy to open up a business there and have it registered. It's super friendly to crypto. They make the whole banking thing easier. So there's lots of this kind of stuff that they've done. So it's just become, I think, a very attractive place for people that are
Hmm.
entrepreneurs and they just want to get, run a business and not kind of have all of this regulation and
Yeah.
uncertainty to deal with. So they're basically capitalizing on the fact that the West is just a hot regulatory mess
Yeah.
and, frankly, quite oppressive. But I mean, they have a, what do you call him? The sheikh. I guess he's like the king, but he's a sheikh, so who runs it. So it is a dictatorship. I mean, what he says goes.
Yeah.
Um, and they've got lots of kind of laws that we might not be familiar with in the Western world, like you can't go and stay with a male that you're not married to, or like stay in a hotel with somebody you're not married to. They've got some restrictions on drinking, so like certain days of the week and certain places you can't buy alcohol. um and obviously the
Goodness.
Muslims don't drink. Yeah, so there
Yeah.
are restrictions there, but I mean, it's a very pleasant place to live. Like, it's very safe, like very safe and just, clean. Very hot though. I mean, it is insanely hot. I think I went there twice. I went once in February, and I can't remember, maybe the other time was April or something.
Yeah. I was gonna
But
ask if you'd been.
oh, it's so hot. I mean, it's a desert. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we need to do an Access Tribe trip there.
I mean, I don't mind Dubai. It wouldn't be my first choice where to live. And we've got two dogs, so I wouldn't take the dogs there because, I mean, they'd be indoors the whole time in the air
Yeah.
conditioning.
It'd
It
be
just
too
wouldn't be.
hot.
Yeah, it just wouldn't be a very fun life for them. But I mean, I can see why people live there. It's very luxurious, like beautiful restaurants, loads of beautiful shops. Like, everyone's got a ton of money there. You can pretty much outsource anything as well if you want anything done. I had a colleague actually from London who moved back there. She was from there. She's Palestinian, but had been sort of displaced, or, Palestinian origin. So she was born in Dubai, but she went back there, and and she was sort of saying to me, I don't understand how people manage in London. In Dubai, if I need something from the pharmacy, I just call someone, they bring it to me. And she was just like so disgusted by how the service industry in the UK was not up to snuff. So yeah, I mean, it's if you've got money there, it's a fantastic place to live, like really
Well, that's what I was
fantastic.
gonna say. It sounds like you need to have money.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to go there as a Westerner if you didn't have a decent job. So the assumption is that if you're living there, it's because you have enough money to pay your way, and then
Yeah.
you can, enjoy quite a nice standard of living. I mean, everywhere's got air conditioning, swimming pools, like all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, no, it's okay. It's not a bad place. Wouldn't be my first choice to live in, but I guess if your government is, censoring you, you might prefer just to go to Dubai and be able to live in peace.
Yeah. I think some of the Australians too are some of them have been talking about going to El Salvador as well. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've heard very mixed things about El Salvador. Everyone's very optimistic, but I feel like when I read Twitter, it's almost like they're working for the El Salvador marketing department. I'm like, if it's that nice, you don't have to keep telling people to come there.
that's funny. I lived there this year. I was there for a month.
Where are you?
And yeah, I was there for a month. I stayed pretty in El Zante for about a month. I was there. I helped with the having party a little bit, and then I just stayed after that for a month. So um,
Thoughts?
for me, I mean, the biggest part is the community. I mean, it is, and it's a beautiful country, but the community is just very, very strong. So if you want to be surrounded by like-minded individuals, and I mean, that's the place to go. And it's pretty compact. I mean, there are people living in El Zante, there are people living in San Salvador. You can go live in the middle of nowhere if you want to, but there's so many meetups happening all the time. Like, there's probably one every night if you wanted to go to one. So you
Oh,
can
wow.
constantly meet people. And this is people from all over the world. So from all different walks of life, people are coming there. And even if they're not living there full time, like they're coming in like I did for a month or two, some people are just coming to visit. So you're constantly meeting new people. And like after the having party, there were a lot of people that stayed for a few weeks. And there's just something, it's hard to explain. Like, there's something magical almost when you're there and you're just sitting at a table of other Bitcoiners, and coming up with ideas on how to make this country better. And any business idea that you can come up with, you could start there. So there's a lot of room for growth. You can feel the hope when you're in the country. And yeah, it's really positive. So I mean, I had a great experience.
Really?
I'm thinking of going back. It's growing like rapidly fast, so it's getting more expensive to live there
Mm.
as well, especially if you want to live kind of on the beach. But it's a beautiful country. I this was my third time there, and
Oh, wow. So you've been a decent amount, huh?
yeah, I went this time. I wanted to go kind of get out of the main areas, and I did some traveling on my own, and I went to the proposed Bitcoin city too, and kind of did some fun things this trip too. I camped on a volcano, which was awesome. But what was neat about getting out of El Zonte and Bitcoin Beach was just meeting other people in the country and getting their opinion of what they thought about Bitcoin. And there definitely still is a need for more education there for sure. It's not like Bitcoin was introduced and now everybody's just accepting Bitcoin and they know everything about it. I mean, there's still some resistance from some of the locals that they don't understand. There's not enough education. They think it's too volatile. So I think it's the more people go there just to teach and educate, the better. I mean, and there are some people are doing great things, like Me Premier Bitcoin is doing great. I know there's other educational services there, but they can't reach everyone. So the
Yeah.
more people that come and educate, even if you're just going for a little bit, the better. So
Yeah. Where did you stay when you were there?
I was mainly in El Zonte. I got an apartment there.
Or like an Airbnb?
Yeah, it was with like some local Bitcoiners that I had met on a prior trip. So
Wow. Oh, okay, cool. So you basically organized it, went and stayed with people that you knew, and then just traveled around.
yeah, I got a car this time, and then I just kind of moved about. I wasn't gone too long. I kind of traveled for about 2 weeks, but yeah, they're doing great things there. I mean, they've started a Bitcoin farmers market, which is really cool, and
Nice.
so a lot of people are making their own products, which is just you kind of get to me. You kind of got an idea of what it's like to live outside of the system. I mean, people are showing their proof of work. They're making soaps, they're making coffee. Beef Back Better has started grass-fed, grass-finished meat there. So, and what's cool, I think you go to this Bitcoin farmers market and then you get all your goods from there. It's nice to kind of know, like, hey, these products that I'm using, this food that I'm eating, all comes from the community, and I know what's in these products. I know where I'm getting my food from. I mean, there's something really nice about that instead of just
Yeah.
what's
BTC
going to.
Sessions is doing a similar thing as well in Canada,
Yeah,
also starting a circular economy. Yeah.
yeah, and we're actually, I guess I can talk about that too. We're actually doing one here too. So that last year at Hodlween, we did a Hodlween market on the second
Oh,
day,
nice.
and same concept. So we just had vendors come in, and it can be anything that you want to sell as long as you accept Bitcoin. You can also accept other forms of payment, but you just have to accept Bitcoin. So
Hmm.
we're doing one October 12th, and that's going to be our third one. And so just same concept, just having a market and people accept Bitcoin. And what's cool about that is we're educating a lot of people because we have somebody in our group, Johnny Delgado. He makes Peruvian hot sauce, and he does a lot of markets in Charlotte. So he's telling a lot of other vendors that we're doing this. So he's educating them on how to accept Bitcoin. So we're teaching people along the way, which is really cool.
That's amazing. That's really incredible. So tell me about when you drove around the US in your van then, because were you
Mhm.
doing that? Like, were you coming home in between and did you have a home to stay in, or like were you just on the road constantly?
No, I had a home. So last year I went with the Beef Initiative and Texas Slim to go to Australia for two. I was in Australia for about a month, and then Slim went to Thailand, and I just stayed in Australia and hung out with other Bitcoiners, and then I went to New Zealand and was kind of just on my own in New Zealand. And it's funny when I travel, I usually reach out on Twitter just saying like, hey, I'm here. Are there any Bitcoiners that want to meet up? And people have been just so friendly to me. I mean, the New Zealand community was so nice to me. They had a dinner where I met Bitcoiners, and they just happened to have an event that was happening called BitKiwi, which is an awesome Bitcoin event that
Oh,
they put
cool.
on. So I did that. So I was gone for about 3 months, and then I came back and went to Bitcoin Miami with my family actually, and then went to El Salvador for the first time with my three brothers. And then I came back, and
Wait,
I
so you
think it
have
was like,
three brothers
yeah, I have three older brothers. um, we're like a
and
Bitcoin
all of
family.
them are
We
Bitcoiners.
Yeah, they're all Bitcoiners. And then
I love it.
we've gotten our parents on board too. So we're a Bitcoin family.
That's so
um,
cool. Oh my God.
yeah, we have a family chat, and then we have a separate Bitcoin family chat. um, but yeah, shortly after that, and this whole time I have a home, but I was renting my home out on Airbnb the whole time. And so then I came home for a little bit and then got in the van, and I was traveling. It wasn't that long really. I was traveling for most of August of last year, but I still have my van, and I would love to do it again. My house actually is for sale right now, so I think I'm going to leave Charlotte, but I don't know where I'm going yet. It might be El Salvador, but I'm not sure. So
Wow. That is crazy. Like, what a crazy life you've had. Is that a real big contrast to when you were working in Baltimore then? Is that like, was it, I mean, just a,
yeah, I
do you feel
mean,
like you're just living somebody else's life now? Not somebody else's life. Were you living somebody else's life before? Maybe now you're living your own life.
100%. Yes, I look back on that time, and I mean, I had a great time. I made a great group of friends in the DC area, but I look back on that and it's like, who was I? Because I feel like I was living outside of myself, and I'm kind of still, it's a transition, right? When you go and you switch your life up, it's a total transition down to relationship, work, where you're living, and I'm kind of still in it a little bit, like figuring out my footing, like how am I going to live this life of freedom? Like since I've left what you would call the corporate world, I have no desire to go back. And, I've learned through this that some people can handle it or tolerate it, but it's just not for me. So it's kind of figuring out, okay, well, how am I going to live this life of freedom moving forward?
Yeah. Well, I think most people that leave the corporate world don't go back. I think once you, I actually have a bit of a, I don't know if you're familiar with the works of Rene Girard.
No.
He's a philosopher, but he's followed very actively by Peter Thiel. So he's got this whole kind of theory about mimesis, and there's a whole thing about sacrifice in it, which is a whole other conversation. But it's very interesting. If you don't want to read Rene Girard's work, I'd really recommend reading the book called Wanting by Luke Burgess, spelled Burgis, um, because he basically summarizes Rene Girard's stuff in a way that's much more understandable. But at a baseline, he talks about mimesis and how everybody in the world is kind of copying each other. So you learn your wants and your desires from other people as well. So if everybody around you is like trying to go after that promotion, you're like, oh, I should be doing that too. I'm going to go after that promotion. And I actually think, funnily enough, that the powers that be made a bit of a mistake with the whole lockdown, because what ended up happening was I think a lot of people were broken out of their mimesis. So you'd spent time going to the office, you were like constantly keeping up with the Joneses. And then all of a sudden, you're outside of that environment and you're kind of left at home to your own devices. And suddenly everyone's like getting into different hobbies, researching different stuff. Loads of people, I mean, I'd say 80% of the people I talked to in the Bitcoin space really got into it during lockdowns. Um,
Yeah.
and I just think that yeah, people have been broken out of it. So now they're not kind of looking at this corporate world and this rat race and, oh, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, and thinking it's appealing. They're looking at it and going, like, what do I actually want to do with my life? Like, what do I enjoy doing? How do I want to spend my time? And I think for a lot of people, they've just had a huge change as a result of that.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree. And it's an interesting place to be because I like for myself, I think this is how a lot of people are. You just kind of like grew up in the Western world. You kind of just follow what the system or society tells you to do. I followed that, and I just said, well, I'm going to go to college. That's what I'm just expected to do. I'm going to get this so-called good degree and just follow all these steps. But for me, it was just deeply unsatisfying. I just felt like I was living a different life. So yeah, I think a lot of did happen to a lot of people during the lockdowns, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, you want people to be living to truly who they are, and that makes
Mm,
like for a whole a happier world.
yeah,
But I think
definitely.
it's scary for the powers in charge, because then hopefully you get people that are thinking for themselves, and they're not going to like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are not being herded as much anymore. It's interesting as well because it's funny to observe that the more independently people think and the more they question stuff, the more the system's immune system kicks in and the more authoritarian it becomes. But it's almost like it's kind of driving its own destruction because, they're trying to kind of put lids on everything by being more authoritarian. And it's just making the situation worse and worse. Like more and more people now are waking up and going, oh my God, the people that really just wanted to be left alone and were minding their own business, living their lives, are all of a sudden going, hang on a minute. I'm going to have to get politically active here, or I'm going to have to start pushing back, or, whatever the things, economically active, boycotting companies that are doing things that I fundamentally disagree with. I mean, there's lots of talk now of like boycotting all of the companies that had mandates, and saying, well, we're not going to do business with you. And I'm like, well, yeah, these things have consequences, right? In
Yeah,
fact,
yeah, for
some of them, I
sure.
think in some of the states, they've actually won lawsuits against them, where people got fired. They've been able to recover, like, basically being paid out for that, or compensated, I should say. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, really crazy times. So I'm curious. So I'm just personally really curious about this, 'cause I did a lot of traveling like in my youth, and I couldn't wait in some ways to be stable. And then I lived in lots of different places over the last few years, and it felt very destabilizing. And I was kind of like, oh, I just want to be in one place and not have to move around. So I'm curious how you deal with that. Do you thrive on it, or are you kind of like, oh God, I've got to do another trip now?
Um, I think I'm teeter-tottering on both of those. So I mean, I, I definitely love traveling and love seeing new places, but I think there's going to come a time like, hey, I want to have a home base. And I thought that was Charlotte, but Charlotte just hasn't really felt like it fits for me. So I think a little bit of both. Like I want to find a spot that is my home base that feels good and feels at home, but I think there'll always be a part of me that has a sense of adventure or love to travel. And um, I'm trying to figure out ways to make that work. And some of that might just be like from my events, So even if that means like being in a host or having my own facility where people or travelers come that I can host them. And then I think that will fill my love of travel as well. So it's a little bit of both, but I think having some stability in your life is a good thing too. If you're constantly traveling, it's a little unsettling.
Yeah. And you grew up in Charlotte, right?
Sort of. I mean, we moved around
Close.
a lot. We moved around a lot growing up. So I was born in, moved all over the states. I was born in Alabama, then I moved to Utah, and then we moved to Texas, and then Tennessee, and then Charlotte. So I didn't get to
Ah,
Charlotte until I was about 13 years old. So maybe that's why I like being on the move so much.
yeah.
Because really, about every 5 years of my life, I moved. So really, the longest I've ever stayed somewhere was when I was working in DC, and I was there for about 7 years.
That's interesting. Do you know, it's funny. I lived in Baltimore for a year when I was 19. I was nannying there.
Really?
Yeah, in Towson.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was on the border of Canton and Fells Point.
Oh,
And
okay.
actually Baltimore gets a bad rep, but I loved it. I mean, there was really nice people there. And at my age, I think I was about 23 or 24, but there were a lot of people that age that had just moved there. And it was a fun place. DC
Yeah.
is like a lot different than Baltimore. I mean, you're in the mecca
Yeah.
of politics. So
I mean, I don't like DC at all. The last time I went there was, I think it was like August 2021. I went to see a friend. She was just joining the Foreign Service. So I just went to see her before she disappeared off to some random place. And I hadn't been to DC for a few years, and I was like, God, this place is horrible. It's just,
yeah, I mean, you have to find like a good group of people there, but it's true what people say. It's kind of like you go somewhere and somebody asks what immediately what you do, and if you can't help them or they don't think you can help them, they kind of just dismiss you. And I mean, you're in the thick of it. It's the heart of the politics in the United States, so
yeah,
it's not where I'd want to be long term. I will say that as a city, I think it has a lot of positives in regards to like it has outdoor areas. They keep them very nice. Um, there's always for events, there's always things to do. There's always cultural events. The food scene is good, but yeah, it's not really where you'd want to or where I'd want to live or
yeah.
settle down.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't think you could pay me. I don't think there's any sum of money you could pay me to live in DC. I'll be honest, I don't think
Well,
there's any sum of money you could pay me to move back to New York either. I mean, it was fun while I was there and it was great to see stuff, but I'm like, yeah.
once you kind of get like this mindset that you're talking about, I don't know if you feel this way, but it's hard. It kind of becomes hard, and this is coming from me who I've been a city girl, like to be in any city really, because you kind of just see it's like what is the purpose of all this? You do see all the people like kind of just feeding the system, and so it's kind of hard to be in any city really.
Yeah, and I think they're just quite boring in the sense that if you live in a city, it's like when I had a perception when I was younger that cities were kind of where it was happening, and if you want to like be in the thick of it, then you have to be in a city, and there's some truth to that. But when I look at what I used to be able to do in New York, it was like go to a yoga class, go out for dinner, go to the cinema, go to a theatre show, go to a museum, or I guess a nightclub, although I put like, well, yeah, I did do some clubbing there. So that's basically like the range of what you can do. Anything else you want to do outside of that is really difficult to do. Like if you want to go canoeing, super difficult. You have to hire a car, drive somewhere, whatever. If you want to, I don't know, like do any kind of activity that's not any of those six that I just listed, is really impossible to do, and it just becomes really difficult. Even just going for a hike, like living in
Yeah.
Brooklyn, it's like you can't really, you have to hire a car, you have to have a car, and that's really difficult to have in Brooklyn because there's no parking. So usually you have to hire a car, so that's really expensive. Then you have to drive about an hour and a half before you get outside of the concrete to anywhere that you can actually hike. And by that time it's like this massive mission just to go for a walk in the woods,
Yeah.
um
Totally understand. I think that's why, I mean, and some cities are better than others, right? If you look at the west of the United States, I mean, you have places like Colorado and Utah that are I think maybe a little bit better in those regards. Like you don't have to drive as far to get outdoors. You kind of are in the outdoors. So I did a different van trip before I got my van. I rented a van and like lived in it for also a month and went to all those states. And I mean, they have a lot of pros out there, but I think that's also why a place like El Salvador is very attractive, at least to me, because you're immersed in the outdoors. I mean, they
Mhm.
have the beach, they have the mountains, and it's not that big of a country, so you can get to these places very quickly. And then you can live in a smaller community and have things like these Bitcoin farmers markets and have this small community, which is, I mean, I think community is so important. And then they still do have a city if you want to go to San Salvador. So I think some places like that are going to be attractive, especially to Bitcoiners.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Where did you sleep when you were in the van then? Did you just park up in some random place and sleep in the van, or did you go to a campsite? Sorry.
um, yeah, both. So there's all these apps that you can download on your phone. A good one is called iOverlander, and there's like freecampsites.net. And yeah, you just look up campsites. So it's I think it's harder on the East Coast where I'm at, and I should have given this more thought, but there's just not as much public land out here. If you go out west to Colorado and Utah, there's tons of public land, so you can go and camp on these sites for like, two weeks or longer. I wasn't traveling that long, so I'm not sure how long you can stay, but and a lot of them are free, and you'll go to these campsites and it's some of the most beautiful places you've ever seen. Like, and it's free. So, but then sometimes I do go to campsites. I mean, my van my van is pretty primitive, so I don't have a shower. So sometimes I'll just pay to go to a campsite, and so you can take a shower. Um,
You
but
didn't have
yeah,
a
I
solar
mean,
shower.
I did have that, but I honestly like didn't use it that much because by the times like you can find showers, it's like I just rather take a normal shower. Um, but yeah, I actually, when I went to New Zealand too, I didn't say this. I got a van there too, and I saw New Zealand in a van, which I had no idea at the time. Like that is the way to see New Zealand. They are so friendly to van lifers and people camping. So I mean, some of the places I saw were just that I camped at were just absolutely stunning. So,
It's
but I mean,
amazing though.
it's
Did you not get lonely traveling on your own, or do you do you enjoy it?
I mean, I definitely do. There's pros and cons for sure. You get to choose your own days, but yeah, it definitely gets lonely. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day who also did some solo travel, and there's ups and downs. People look at it and they say, "Hey, that's your life is so great and all this," but there are lonely days for sure. And you meet people along the way, which is so great. I mean, I have met so many amazing people, like a lot of amazing Bitcoiners along the way that have become truly like family to me. But you're constantly, if you're on the move, which I was moving a lot, like you're constantly saying goodbye to people too. So that's where like the question that you asked about having a home base or having one place that you want to be. I think there's a lot of importance to that because if you want to grow community, you kind of have to be there to to build this community. And so but there's pros and cons, when traveling by yourself, you get to make your own decisions, you get to choose what you want to do and, build your own days and meet new people. But yeah, it definitely gets lonely. There's highs and lows for sure. I think some people just look at it or me or other people and they just say, "Oh, it must be so great." But there's definitely ups and downs for sure.
What would you say was the best experience you had then when you were traveling in the van on your own?
Um, the best. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, my first thing is just saying like the places, just what I saw, like just the scenery was absolutely amazing. Um, but there's also this sense of freedom being in the van too, that yeah, you could just go wherever, and it's like an adventure mobile. And you it gives this sense of minimalism too. Like also when I traveled, I had like one backpack with me, and just makes you realize that you can be free, and you can you don't need all these things, right? And like to live a good life. And so there's beauty in that as well. But yeah, I mean, it's like being in a van is, well, it's probably not for everybody, but for me, it's just like a constant adventure, And I mean,
Yeah.
no way I could do it forever, but for short stints of time, it's pretty fun. And then meeting other people that are camping too is also really fun. You'll pull up and then meet somebody right next to you who might be traveling by themselves as well, and just hear their story, and it's fun. And when I was, especially when I was in New Zealand, I was meeting people of all different ages. And what was interesting is that I think a lot of travelers have the same kind of values and ethos as a Bitcoiner. They just might not understand, they haven't gotten the financial part of it yet. But they're
It's a
all
bit
about,
orange pilling along the way.
yeah, yeah, but they're all about, living a life of freedom, and they just maybe haven't heard the Bitcoin part yet. So yeah, maybe I need to get like a big Bitcoin logo put on my van or something.
Yeah,
But
but then that makes you a bit of
I
a
can't.
target as well,
Yeah,
to be fair.
exactly. Exactly.
But did you ever feel unsafe? Like, what was the worst experience you had while traveling?
Um, I haven't, not that I can remember any kind of like bad experience, but I will say when I'm alone, because I've gone with some friends too, but when I'm completely alone, there is a bit of like sleeping with your eye open as a single woman, right? I mean, it's funny. I Because people ask about my time in El Salvador, and I've had lots of people ask me if I felt safe there. And my answer was like, I felt safer in El Salvador traveling alone than I did in my van in the United States. And yeah, it is a little scary. And I mean, some campsites I went to were very remote, and but I watched some videos of other people that have been living van life for like many years, and women that have been doing it, and they just said, what's the difference than being in your home alone? Like if you live in a home by yourself too. I mean, I live in Charlotte, and when I was gone earlier this year, like three houses down from me, a house got shot at. Like two weekends in a row. So I mean, like the crime in
Wow.
Charlotte is getting much worse, and crime's getting worse in a lot of cities. So like what's the difference if you're in your van alone or if you're in a home alone? Things could happen too. But you just have to be smart about it. I personally think I'd feel safer if I had some sort of weapon on me, but I usually just have a knife like next to my bed and my key next to me if something were to happen. But I've never had any experiences at all that were scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that, isn't it? I always find this really odd about the US, and I saw that Thomas Massey, like Representative Thomas Massey, had put forward a bill to basically, I can't remember exactly how he'd phrased it, but basically to say that you couldn't kind of, you had to have a constitutional law to be able to carry, across the entire United States without exceptions across all of the different states. And I always find this really strange because you've got this constitutional Second Amendment, which sort of says, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed, which to me would indicate that, like, there is no exception or no opt out. There's no reason why you can be told, or you can't be told what you can carry or when you can carry it. The whole point is that it shall not be infringed. So it's
Mhm.
not like they're giving you permission. It's saying that the government doesn't have permission to infringe your right. And yet, when you go, I interviewed Jessica Solche, who made that movie, was it called Death Athletic? Have you seen it?
No.
Oh God, it's so good. It stayed with me for ages afterwards. And I watched some of the videos of Cody Wilson, the guy that's kind of the protagonist of it, that it's a documentary, but she basically filmed him for 7 years. She followed him around, not all the time, but like over a period of 7 years. And he goes and does like court cases to fight for Second Amendment rights, basically. So he's been in court and all sorts of like different lawsuits. Um, but it's really worth watching the film if you get a chance to watch it. You can just download it on her website. It's amazing.
Okay.
But she was sort of explaining that, like for example, in New Jersey. So Cody's had a few lawsuits in New Jersey because New Jersey they have basically some, I think you're not allowed to transport a gun. I think I might be getting this wrong, but like a gun out from out of state. And so I was like, well, so if I'm, let's say, I don't know, in Vermont, and let's say Vermont is like it's open carry and I'm allowed to have any weapon I want. and then I need to drive down to North Carolina, let's say, but on the way there, I'm crossing several states. What am I supposed to do with my weapon in between states if the laws differ? Like if I'm taking it from A to B, I should be able to carry it from A to B without having, like any issues. I mean,
Yep.
you can argue the rightness or wrongness about the right to bear arms, but the fact is that the US has it in its constitution. So I'm just like, in practice, it doesn't seem to work very well.
No.
For example, if you had a van life and you did have a gun on you because you wanted to be safe.
Yeah, I'd probably end up just getting put in jail for like for some different law in a state somewhere.
Yeah, well, the only time I found that out was when there was that thing with Carl Rittenhouse, and they were trying to say that he'd crossed state lines with a gun, and I was like, "Sorry, what do you mean he crossed state like what? He crossed a line, and like now he's not allowed to have it anymore? Like, how does that work?"
Yeah. And then
Yeah,
you could so easily do that. I mean, like even here in North Carolina, like South Carolina is right on the border. I mean, you could easily do that and get in trouble
yeah,
for it.
yeah. Well, it's weird because you guys are sort of almost like separate countries, but not. You know,
Yeah.
like there's no border, there's no like little booth when you get to
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
exit.
exactly.
Actually, I'll say Europe's a bit like that now as well, though. I was really pissed about this, actually. We went to a wedding in Italy in April and did a little tour around Switzerland and then drove up just across Austria for one day and then down into Italy for the wedding. And I got this a couple of weeks ago, this letter through the mail, and it was like, you've got a €350 fine, which is like, I don't know how many, maybe it's roughly about the same amount. I can't remember what the exchange rate is now, but it's not a small amount. Be like at least a couple
Yeah,
hundred dollars.
right.
And it was basically because apparently I'd gone into Austria in the hire car without having this like digital pass thing.
Oh,
But there
geez.
is, yeah, but apparently, so I Googled it and I'm like, this can't be genuine. Like, what the heck is this? And apparently, like, they have signs when you cross into the country, but they're not very obvious. And you're supposed to go to a gas station and buy one of these things, and they cost like $10 or something. But if you don't have one, you get this fine. So I'm like, hang on a minute. So nobody stopped me on entering. There was no point at which I could have purchased this little ticket thing. I'd no idea that it was there. There was definitely no obvious sign that I had to buy one, and it certainly wouldn't have been in English if there was. And I was in there one day. We were literally there 24 hours, and you're going to find me €350. And I thought that is the last time I'm ever going to Austria. I was like,
Right.
fuck you guys.
So that's how they're getting everybody, I'm sure. So how did they even know that how did they catch you?
Because, yeah, I know it sucks, doesn't it? Well, because when you hire the car, you obviously have to give your driver's license and all those
Oh, you
details.
had like
Yeah, so
rented a
the
car.
car rental
Yeah.
just basically like they send it to you in the post and just say, "Hey, you owe this to the Austrian government." And I was like, "Oh God." And I mean, look, I mean, chances are I'll never go to Austria again. It was like 10 years since I'd last been there. I'm like, why would I go back? But I was like, I don't really want to set foot in Austria and get
Yeah.
arrested. You didn't pay your fine. I thought, what dicks?
Yeah. I mean, that's how they're getting people.
I know. Yeah, we need to get rid of all these government bureaucracies. They're just literally like, robbing us blind. I mean, it's just, oh.
I agree.
Make the world free again. Well, thank you so much, Liz. I'm just conscious of time. This has been so interesting, and I'm so glad to have finally met you.
Hey,
Can
you
you,
too.
yeah, and could you just give people listening a list of where they can find you and also details of Hodlween if they want to attend?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Babes Who Bitcoin on Twitter and Noster, and then we have a Halloween account, and tickets are at Halloween.party.
Oh, nice. Nice URL. Love it. Well, thank you so much. So you're planning, I guess, for Halloween now, and then what's next on the horizon? Possibly a move to El Salvador.
Yeah, possibly. I think after Halloween, I will be going back to El Salvador for adopting Bitcoin. So then I'm not sure after that yet.
Nice. Okay. Well, then I might have you back on if that's all right after that to hear what it's like.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
We're actually back because Liz forgot to talk about Tab Conference before Halloween. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Halloween this year, we're moving it to Atlanta. So it's not going to be in Charlotte. It will be in Atlanta this year, and it will be a satellite after party to the Atlanta Bitcoin Conference, which that is an amazing technical Bitcoin conference. So that will be October 23rd through the 26th, and then Halloween will be the night of October 26th.
Oh, okay. So you're going to have it early then. It won't be on Halloween.
No, yeah, we usually we try and pick the best date around October 31st, but just depends on when the date where it falls on.
Nice. And for people who don't know about Tab Conference, what's Tab Conference about? Is that mainly for developers?
Yeah, it is a technical Bitcoin conference. I went a few years ago, but they typically have places too for if you're a beginner. Like one of the year I went, I was just getting into Bitcoin and they had a Bitcoin 101 village. So you can go there, and then they have people that create different villages. So there's kind of different little sections of where you can go, and it's very hands-on. I mean, they do have speakers as well, but it's a lot of interactive workshops. So as from the Bitcoin conferences I've been to, it's the best technical one that I've experienced.
So basically, it's like do Tab Conference and then come and party for Hodlween.
Yeah,
Sounds
exactly.
amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Liz, again.
Yeah, thanks, Krista.